I'm pleased to say I'm going to be joined by the one and only Gareth Quirk for the next 3 hours.
Why? So for those that are just listening, not watching, we should explain why you just called me Gareth Quirk.
Yeah, because you've got a Marks and Spencer, well, it looks like a Marks and Spencer, grey woolen waistcoats, like every Gareth before you.
Marks and Spencer's sartorial department, great for underpants, but not much else in my opinion.
What is it, the relationship between waistcoats and people called Gareth or Gary?
I don't know, but look, I'm wearing one because my...
Gareth Southgate, Gareth Gates, he was a bit waistcoaty.
Yeah, OK. So my valet said to me this morning, Mr Quirk, would you like to try something different today? So I said, OK, Pierre, whatever his name is. Yeah, let's go for the vest look, shall we? So here I am, yeah, looking autumnal, I hope.
Looking like an M&S model, can I just say? If I put a sort of black and white filter on you and you reclined on a couch with a bit more stubble, you could probably sell that thing for 35 quid.
Yeah, no, I'm, yes, just trying to make a sartorial effort, but from what you're saying, it's kind of failed miserably. I look a bit like a snooker player.
I actually look like the studio, I've just noticed.
You're blending, aren't you?
Yeah, I put this bright blue jacket on stage thinking, this is new, that's going to look nice.
You're effectively you're a floating head.
Yeah, forgetting that actually the colour of the Talk Studios is this colour. So I think this one's going to go in the wardrobe, probably not to come out in future, which is a pity because it's brand new. But there you are. Sometimes we get it wrong. We're going to be asking you today, by the way, if you want to join the conversation, what you think about Sir Keir Starmer's plans to unleash a raft of nanny state interventions to save the NHS from collapse. We all have to save it. But whatever you do, people, don't get sick. You know, it's our responsibility because we can't rely on having a health service. We've got to do everything we can to just be healthy. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text us 87222, or you can get in touch with us on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. There you go, that's a small print. Let's talk now about what is going on internationally, because Sir Keir Starmer has flown out to Washington, DC for a parley with our American friends over there. And part of the conversation, at least, is going to be about how we carry on helping Ukraine in their war against Russia. This all comes down to particular missiles that we have supplied them, or it's got our technology in, which we've said, go on, crack on, use it where you want to use it, not just in Ukraine, but now you've gone into Kursk in Russia. If you want to use these precision weapons over there, then do it. And Putin has said, well, if you do this, that's a red line, because apparently it means that Putin's argument would be that these missiles might be in Ukraine's hands, but in order for them to be operated, they need spyware, they need intelligence from satellites that aren't under Ukraine's control, which essentially means, according to Putin, there'll be NATO fingers on NATO buttons on Russian, controlling weapons that will be used on Russian territory. Where do you stand on all of this?
Look, it's the hypocrisy shouldn't be lost to us. And actually, there's two elements of hypocrisy here. One, of course, is Vladimir Putin saying that if we were to supply these weapons for the use on the Russian mainland, it would be an act of war, when he himself, you know, delights in cyber hacking Britain and America and the West, and those actions, I think, could easily be defined as acts of war, particularly when potentially those acts of cyber terrorism take down vital infrastructure. So it's pretty rich, isn't it, from Putin? I actually don't think we should be quite so worried about Vladimir Putin anymore. The fact that his ground forces have been rather pathetic, I think, over the last 2 years in the Ukraine. They crumbled. The fact that he's had to press gang people off the streets of Moscow at the age of 18 to kind of use them as cannon fodder in his fight, his pathetic fight against Ukraine.
Well, he was ahead of Sir Keir Starmer in releasing prisoners, wasn't he? Because they were sent to the front line. I think that says it all. But Alex, of course, people would say, yeah, but what about the nuclear option? Look, who can second guess the mind of such a maniac, frankly, you know, such a person that would do the things that he has done. So I'm not saying that it's not a dangerous situation to be in, but I don't think that we should be that concerned about what Vladimir Putin is. This is all about Russia wanting to win. And we should want Russia not to win. And we should want Russia, in my mind, not to lose, basically, as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we are just throwing good money after bad with a protracted war of attrition.
Well, with no accountability, don't forget. I mean, this is a whole different subject and conversation. What's happening to the billions, the hundreds of billions of pounds that's going from France, Germany, Britain, and the United States to Zelensky?
Russia's getting long-range missiles from Iran, right? Russia has a good mate over there in Tehran who's supplying them with all sorts of things. And I could go into details about what we've been giving to Iran Iran over the years that Iran might have used to build things that they're now giving to Russia. It's an absolute mess. But what is the point in saying, well, we'll give you these missiles, but you can only use them in this tiny little way?
Yeah.
You know, that seems... That's saying, look, I'm going to help you with this fight by tying one hand behind your back.
Yeah, well, but here's the second element of the hypocrisy that strikes me this morning, which is that not 3 or 4 days ago we had David Lammy, you know, who's probably the most pathetic foreign secretary I think this country's ever had the misfortune to have in place. He says on the one hand we are going to stop arming Israel to a great extent and makes great stock of that because he believes that Netanyahu is a war criminal. But then at the same time is quite happy to not think about parallels, if you like, in terms of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and continue to actually be enthusiastic about that conflict. But the fact also, of course, if you read the media today, which I'm sure you have, Lammy has doubled down on spending even more money on defence, which is a wonderful thing. I think most of us agree we should spend 2.5% to 3% actually of our GDP on defence. But of course that involves many tens of billions of pounds, whilst, and I hate to go back to this, and I'm sure we will as the morning progresses, whilst pensioners will be freezing to death this winter.
I mean, I just think that when it comes to the way that the West has worked in the past, and people are now getting quite lily-livered about intervention, and I understand that. There's a lot of mess that we have made around the world in history. But when we were dragged out of Afghanistan, for example, it's created one heck of a horrible vacuum that is now being filled by the Taliban 2.0. So we're like, oh, we're going to do it differently this time. We're going to be nice democracy-first Taliban who you can all work with on the international stage. Absolutely not. They've become some of the most ferocious monsters in the world with some of the restrictions they're putting on their own population. But on top of this, apparently Al-Qaeda's back. You've got Osama bin Laden's son, the Crown Prince of Terror, now running that network, which is thriving in Afghanistan, no doubt aided and abetted by their mates in the Taliban, who are once again planning terror attacks around the world. And this is what happens when Western might goes into decline, when all of a sudden we become rather lily-livered about anything interventionist, the bad guys get a run on us.
But of course there is a counter-argument that post-2001, of course this week we've had the 23rd anniversary of September the 11th, that the gung-ho approach of people like George Bush and Tony Blair caused exactly the problems that we are now facing in terms of that aggression, some would say that unnecessary intervention in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, which then gave birth to Al-Qaeda and ISIS.
Yeah, no, we've definitely made some huge foreign policy mistakes in the past. We backed the Mujahideen at one point and said, oh, you know, you crack on and fight the Soviets. And now look, yeah, exactly. We've made some hideous foreign policy mistakes in the past. I definitely agree with that. But to me, that doesn't mean we should just basically give up on foreign policy in total in the present.
Alex, shouldn't Ukraine just be invited and encouraged to join NATO? So if Ukraine was in the NATO, Russia then has to be on the back foot because they have to back off, because then they've picked a fight with the rest of NATO, the United States, Britain, Germany and so on. Surely NATO is the answer. The
problem is the flip side of this. There'll be people listening to this going, no, the problem is actually inviting Ukraine to join the EU and inviting Ukraine to join NATO is what caused this in the first place, because Russia read that as a threat. I mean, look, all I think is there's no point going into anything lily-livered and half-cocked. You either back Ukraine or you don't. Let's talk very quickly before our first break about this fact that this new report is quite incredible. It's not incredible, it's very credible, but it's incredible that it's actually being released, given that stuff like this has been buried for decades. Low-paid migrant workers are an immediate drain on the public purse. They cost taxpayers more than £150,000 per head by the time they hit state pension age, and that's according to the Office for Budget Responsibility. Now, I remember about a year ago that OBR came out and pointed out, actually, that the vast majority of people coming over to this country weren't necessarily net contributors to the economy. They had as many economically inactive people as the native population. And apparently, if various migrants, the low-paid ones, live to the age of 80, they cost £500,000, £1 million if they live to 100. But by contrast, and this is the bit that should stick in everyone's craw, the average British-born worker boosts public finances by £280,000 by the time they reach state pension age, and that's even once you've taken out education and health spending before they start work. So this report's basically saying that the average British-born worker is adding to the coffers by £280,000, while the average low-paid migrant is taking from the public purse by £150,000.
Yes, so this is not new news. You know, you and I have talked about this a lot. the fact that we have a thing called GDP, which is effectively the value of the British economy. That has been flattish over many, many, many years. It's growing a little bit. We've actually had news this week that in July, for instance, where the latest figures are available, the economy didn't grow at all. When you then look at GDP per person, per capita in Britain, it has declined significantly over the last 10 years or so. So we are getting poorer. We look like we're getting richer by a bit, but per person, because of course we have net migration into the UK of 700,000 people plus every year, we are getting poorer. So the left argument that we need immigrants to do the jobs, we need immigrants to shore up the economy, is bogus. It's completely and utterly incorrect, and we've seen this in the data over many, many years. If I was a cynic, which actually I am, I would say that the reason that those on the left want almost uncontrolled legal and indeed illegal immigration is because it is the voters of the future.
And there are some pretty interesting statistics on that I was reading just this morning, so I'll try and pick those up. During this advert break, I'll use it to do a little bit of research just for you.